Welcome, everybody, to the first Come to the Dyslexic Table live chat of 2024. And as always, we are delighted that Sharon has written one of her wonderful articles, and this time it's on procrastination. So maybe we should leave it till tomorrow.
Yes.
I was practicing that one. Okay, so the article starts off with a great story about Rachel's science project and how it's worth 50% of her grade and it's due on Friday and she hasn't begun and there's only 3 days left and she wants to go out with her friends and she's overwhelmed, but she can't buckle down. And it finishes up with the fact that we've all done that. We've all put things off. And Sharon has a wonderful statistic here that it's been estimated that the average person spends 218 minutes procrastinating every day. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Every year you might spend 55 days putting off tasks you really needed to do. And procrastination means delaying or putting off tasks until the last minute or past their deadline. And most professionals agree it is an avoidance strategy. But the cause for the avoidance varies.
I found that statistic a little bit hard to believe. I spend that much time procrastinating. It's interesting. I don't know how these people come up with these facts.
Yeah. Well, 218 minutes, that's pretty much 3 hours.
Yeah, that's
almost
a lot.
4. The thing that I love is that you've gone and found that there are several types of procrastination. And there's the worrier and the perfectionist and the pleaser and the crisis maker, the dreamer and the defier. So I'm going to suggest that the people on the call figure out which one they are. I think that would be fun. So the worrier who identifies to this one, they don't start an important task because they don't believe they'll be able to do it. They are indecisive and lack confidence and have a high resistance to change, preferring the safety of the known over the risk of the unknown. We have a hand up for that one. Now, the next one is the perfectionist who doesn't start the task because they equate failure to not doing the task perfectly and put forth excessive amounts of time and energy to making sure everything is done perfectly. That is definitely not me. But I have met quite a few children. I always called them reverse perfectionists, like they would rather not start something than get it wrong.
Yeah, I find with some children, even when we have our assessments and they're rating themselves and they rate themselves just okay creativity wise, and then their parents will say they're excellent. But I was told sometimes that's because what they do is never matches the picture in their head. So then they don't think they're good.
Yeah, they'd rather not start. And I can remember that as a child. I can remember having this beautiful picture of what I wanted to draw in my head. And when it came on the paper, it was never anything like it. It was very frustrating. Still happens. And now we have the pleaser or the overdoer procrastinator who commits to doing too many tasks and fails to prioritize. Underlying this is the fear of not living up to their own expectations, impossible standards. They tend to take on more work than they can handle and often find it difficult to relax without feeling guilty. We have some more hands. Well, it is difficult. When you work for yourself, it is difficult to relax without feeling guilty.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have clear boundaries, don't you? We all want to go that extra mile and take on what we can to help people. The crisis maker believes they need the stress or pressure inherent in last-minute action to alleviate boredom and increase motivation. There is a question about the quality of work that involves from this. I do not enjoy crisis.
You see a lot of it, though. I used to be like that, and I stopped because it made me feel so bad. This is way, way back. Then I began to be a little bit more structured in the way I would do things because I didn't like the feeling of being on fire there, trying to get something done.
Can't be comfortable.
I see it as someone wanting to have some kind of pressure motivation to then engage with the task.
Maybe that gets their adrenaline going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laura, do you notice that?
No, I've always worked in positions where there's been a tremendous amount of pressure, and it actually does the reverse for me. It actually drains me completely rather than give me energy. But I do know people who like to have that little bit of tension, that little bit of buildup, and then they just blast through whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is the dreamer, who comes up with lots of ideas, but the thought of work bores or frustrates them. They avoid expressing negative feelings. Instead, they convey those feelings by procrastinating. I saw your hand go up. I don't believe that's you.
Well, I like to come up with ideas, but I don't always like to do them. That's
True.
why.
True. Yeah.
But I don't think I express negative feelings, but
No.
I do like to come up with ideas and not necessarily execute them.
Yeah. I like the ideas and I like the creation. I'm not desperately good at the maintenance, but I don't think that's procrastination. And then the last one is the defier, who is often viewed as rebellious, and underlying this is the belief I shouldn't have to do it. Procrastination is used to defy authority, and they are pessimistic in nature, undercutting their motivation to complete tasks in a timely manner. I don't think we'd be here if we were defiers.
But I think we maybe have worked with people like that, that you give them something to do and they complain constantly, and you're always kind of after them, like, have you started it? Have you started? Oh, I don't know. I've got better things to do right now.
I'm just trying to think of when I last procrastinated.
I procrastinated on the story of procrastination because I thought, only because I am a worrier, will I be able to do this? I wanted to do it. The idea was there. I didn't really execute it, but I did.
I don't see Laura as a procrastinator. Do you ever procrastinate? You haven't got time to.
I was just actually looking up the definition. As I think back, I will definitely put things in an order of importance. And there probably lies in the key to this. Like, I put all of my client work ahead of my own running my business. That, I guess, is a form of procrastination. It's tied into a few things for me.
I don't do it so much, but I always used to procrastinate at looking at my balance because I knew it wasn't going to be what I wanted it to be.
I think one of my procrastinations is maybe if I'm doing a bit of research about something, I never have enough to actually say, well, I've got to a point where I can make a decision about it. It's always I need some more, rather than pulling it all together.
So you don't feel you've ever finished.
Yeah.
Well, luckily for us, Sharon went off to find the answer. And it's funny because honestly, it's only in the last few years where I've seen an overwhelming task and I've suddenly told myself, you don't have to do it all today. Just start it today. You can do the rest tomorrow and then you can do the next and don't think of it. But this Pomodoro.
Yeah, that technique does really work well because for me, once I get started, then I'm okay. Sometimes it's getting started. I might even know what I'm going to start with. It's just sitting down and doing it.
And it tells you to break the tasks into reasonable chunks, doesn't it? And reward yourself with regular breaks. I haven't done that part, but I have done the chunking part. And whenever you're faced with work that you've put off by procrastinating, you should tackle it in precisely timed intervals with a short break. That sounds very regulated to me. I'm not sure I could handle that. It sounds too, what am I doing? I'm sort of keeping tabs on myself.
You're supposed to be super focused in the 20 minutes that you start.
Okay.
Like nothing else, whatever that task is, that's what you're doing and nothing else interrupts you. So it's very intense. So then you probably would want a break maybe.
Right. Being super focused is sort of right down our alley, right? Because obviously when we're working with people who have dyslexia, we're very good at being super non-focused. And I mean, I know we have the tools and I know we know what to do about it, but at the same time, we don't always follow that one. And it says after several work intervals have passed, you can take a longer break. But you are assured that the work will be broken into manageable chunks. I do like that, definitely. And then it also says about the to-do list. And the one thing that I've noticed, I'll ask you guys what you do, but I've noticed if it's a really big task and I think to myself, I haven't got a clue where to start or how to start, I always make like a big chart because I'm visual. And you were saying how it's connected to time. And I mean, we're lucky because we know the meaning of time and we've worked through the concepts, but a lot of people don't have that knowledge of what time is, and it's just a complete blank to them. But the point is, for me, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. If I put things in a cupboard, they're gone. I don't know they're there. When I'm filing, it's all on tables. It's not in cupboards. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So if I see a chart where I can see the whole year or the whole month or whatever period it is, then I can see it. But when you look at your Calendly, all you ever see is a few lines. And that to me doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. But if I can see, oh my gosh, I've got 3 weeks, I've got 4 weeks, I've got 5 weeks to that, then it starts to help me. I don't know. What do you guys do?
I think for the dyslexic person, if they have no concept of time, or the ADHD person have no concept, I can see them doing that, but maybe misperceiving how long the task will take. But then they get into trouble a lot of times just for that alone. Or was it Sue talking about importance or sequence of importance? What really is important and what are we valuing? I think those concepts are really important in order to even stop procrastinating, because we could just misread things very easily. And the other point I wanted to make too is, especially when we're younger, we always seek pleasure, not pain. And sometimes, oh, well, we put it off because this is a lot more fun to do, right?
Sue, what's your secret to success?
Mine is lists and diary. I don't always know what the whole task will be, but I'll start the task and what I've got left goes on the list. Not always timely, not always in order of priority, but I get there.
Absolutely. I have lists of where my lists are. It's true. It really helps. And I was just thinking about the youngsters. When high school kids are meeting this problem, and university students are meeting this problem, they probably don't have paper diaries, or they don't probably make lists because they're all electronic, aren't they? They're all digital. I think some of them actually use alarm systems, like if it's a task that needs to be done by a certain time during the day, but that only tells them when it was due. It doesn't tell them when to start.
I have mostly digital calendars because I juggle many different clients and their schedules as well. I definitely use alarm systems. So I have the digital calendar on my screen, but then I also know that I have to set an alarm for something that I know I'll get distracted and not get back to. But then I also have a planner that's physical one too. Yeah, so I have kind of a blend of a whole bunch of things. And I figure that ought to catch everything.
Definitely. Sharon, in your article, you've talked about the knowledge of self, change, consequence, time, sequence, and order. Those are our concepts. How do you actually see them working in with procrastination? I mean, I know we need to know what time means. I get that.
Yeah. Well, I think consequence, for example, when I go to do something I don't want to do, because sometimes you don't really want to do it, but you see the consequence of not doing it. Like not getting paid would be a possible consequence, right? Or disappointing somebody you care about. So again, trying to avoid painful situations. In the case of ADHD or dyslexia, that concept might not be there. Not always, but it could be part of the problem that they aren't looking at the outcome. They're just looking at the immediate time. I'm thinking of a student go to the bar tonight instead. I'll get to it tomorrow. I think self is important because you have to think of what is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? How do you see yourself? If you don't see yourself capable, then that's a whole other issue. Again, that's how the concepts get into it. And then, of course, the time and the sequence in order. I can see me procrastinating because I can't find something.
Oh, that drives me crazy. Yeah. And organizing and planning and completing tasks. Organizing is all a factor of sequence and order, isn't it? And time.
Yeah.
When Carol Ford was with us, she and I had to do a presentation for the people who declutter houses, personal organizers or something. And they wanted a presentation about how dyslexia affected people who didn't have very organized homes. I think we just looked at the definition and said it was a factor of time, sequence, and order.
when you take somebody through those concepts and you're trying to get them an experience, especially for those with dyslexia or autism or whatever, even making a bed, you don't put the pillow on before you put the sheet on. There's a way of doing it. So everything becomes so chaotic. You tell the child, go clean up your room. Well, where do you start?
I don't know if you know this, Laura, but when we do order with them, order is things in the right place, position, and condition. So Ron says what you do is you pick up the dirty sock and you ask yourself, is it in the right condition? And you think, nope. So what's the right place for dirty socks? In the laundry basket. And there's not really much position to putting a sock in a laundry basket.
Brilliant. I love that.
But then you go to the book and you think, is the book okay? Yeah, it's perfectly fine. What's the right place for the book? On the shelf. And what's the right position for it? On its bottom, facing away, that type of thing. So they just do one article at a time. And if you decide that the right place for your socks is on the bookshelf, then that's your order. It might not be anybody else's, but if you know to go to the bookshelf when you want clean socks, then that's all that matters. It hasn't got to be confused with tidy. We're digressing anyway. I'm procrastinating.
Missing something that you put in your diary or whatever, or on your list, is one of the things that if I've done that, I really beat myself up about. So I have a routine now that the first thing I do every morning when the alarm goes off at 6:30 is actually read the diary for the day I'm on to remind me of what I saw and then what's coming the next day, so that I'm actually featuring that in or whatever is necessary for that to happen.
Yeah, good for you. Now, how do you persuade a young person to do that?
Well, you can encourage it, but they don't like mornings, do they? So whenever they set their alarm for, check the diary first. Some of them have got electronic diaries, so that's quite easy, because I mean it's attached to the hand, isn't it? The mobile, they have a quick look, they know what's coming next, and then they can plan for it.
Yes, I remember now somebody was saying that involves them actually putting it in there in the first place. Because I was just thinking, well, you could have your phone talk to you. You could say, Siri, what am I doing today? And Siri could possibly say that if she knew what you were doing. If you'd put it in, I don't know. Does that ever happen? But that does involve them actually putting it in the first place. I think that's the tricky part.
And that's where self is involved. And I fail at that. Like I think, okay, I'll remember to do that when I get home. And there's a 50% chance that I do. That's self, knowing yourself. Okay, look, I know I'm not going to remember. There's a good chance I won't, so I better do it now.
And that brings us to motivation and responsibility, because again, with young people, they have to be motivated to put it in the first place, to actually look for it. And I know we do the concept of motivation when we train, but it's not really a subject that comes up in high school, is it? We're meant to be motivated, but nobody really goes through what's involved in that.
Yeah.
But isn't that where we do the exercise of problem solving? So this is where it all went wrong. And then we have a look at where in that process we could have made a change to make it all flow better. And as well, the children I've worked with that absolutely love it, because it's like, oh, Sue, I could have. Nice. And then, of course, the next time I meet them, they haven't. But
now you've blown it. We were with you.
At that point, they haven't remembered what they've shared with me in the classroom, but they've actually had like a light bulb moment of they could have done something different. Yes. And then that opens a conversation where hopefully then they will remember it as they go forward.
And this whole thing about responsibility, again, is something that we do. And Ron's definition, as you know, is being able and willing and having the opportunity to choose to do something or not. I think a lot of young people at school don't feel they have the opportunity to choose. I think they feel that they just have to do it, but they don't realize that it is actually a choice, because you can choose to do it or you can choose to avoid it. and there will be a different consequence. And they often don't want the consequence that comes with avoiding it.
I'm doing this parenting course with a couple of people. It seems like now children do not see consequences because parents are constantly protecting them, rescuing them from things. And so if you don't see that there's a consequence to whatever choice you make, you're not motivated in why not procrastinate? Because guess what? Mom will fix it for me.
So, yeah.
Well, there's that too.
That's a tough one for moms, isn't it? To let them fail.
Let them fail, yeah. I remember when my son did his dyslexia correction program many, many moons ago, and I think within a week he had a test in economics, and I'm still used to having to control everything, right? Sit there, make sure he has it, right? And he said to me, I'm going to do this on my own because I know what to do. I know how to study. I know what to do. And I was awake most of the night worried. I let him. Oh my God, what's going to happen without mother's help, right? And he did fine. You have to kind of think, well, what's the worst could happen? The economics is only grade 7 here.
Do they suggest that they just walk them through what the consequences will be? I mean, the children have the choice in the end, don't they? And the young people have the choice. But I guess if somebody actually walked them through it and said, well, look, if you don't do this now, you won't have a chance to repeat it. You won't pass this. You won't be able to go into this. This is what you wanted to do in the beginning. I don't know. Does anybody ever do that with them?
Children aren't told about consequences these days. And if there is a consequence and they have been told, it's never followed through.
And they tend to always equate consequence with a bad thing, don't they? If you don't do this, it'll happen. And it's actually lovely when you tell them that there are good consequences to things, right? If you do it, hand it in time, you might get a grade that will let you go forward to whatever.
In concepts with at the moment said to me, I don't use my tools when I'm in class, and I rarely use my tools when I'm at home. And I said, so what is the consequence of that? And he said, well, nobody else knows whether I am or I'm not, so it doesn't matter. So I said, did you manage to do your reading okay? Well, no. Did you manage to do your maths okay? Which is where he tells me he uses it the most. And the answer was no. And I said, so when you secretly used them, did it work? He said, yes. So then I said, what was the consequence of not using your tools? And he answered his own question.
Yeah.
It's just talking it through with them, isn't it?
And giving the responsibility back.
Well, that's it. It's always theirs. There are quite a few youngsters who just don't realize it is their responsibility.
And I guess, you know, if this is the generation where we're always rescuing children, this is the problem in the Ontario schools. When a child acts up, there's no consequence. They're just change the direction of where they're going. We'll give them this to do instead. Well, what's that do? Nothing. So I can go and hit you, and that's okay because I'll just get to do art or something instead, you know, which maybe I prefer to do anyway. It is a problem. And so if you can't see consequences to any decision, then the more you can procrastinate.
Well, I have a story to end up on. We've been doing this early childhood educator pilot for the 3 to 5-year-olds. And as you know, they have their tools. They can do release and they can do dial and they can do focus. And they've been doing push balls. And this is much younger than the normal K-3 Davis learning strategies. And there's a comment from one of the early childhood educators that she was out in the playground and there was a bit of an altercation between 2 of the children. And I think she said to them that if you're feeling like this, I'm going to ask you to do a big release to get your dial down to 5, and then you can sort out who's going to play with that particular toy. And she talked them through it and it worked out really well. And she said the best part of it was next day, she could physically see them doing release, trying to get their dials down and trying to actually negotiate who was going to get the toy. And it wasn't an altercation. It was just a negotiation. And I mean, if 3 and 5-year-olds can do that, it's absolutely magical. I just love it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Very, very exciting. The new generation. We just need to give them the tools. They'll be fine.
Generation D for Davis.
That would be fun. Well, I think I'm going to bring it to a close. What I'd like to suggest to those who might be listening to this podcast is try and decide what sort of procrastinator are you? Are you the worrier? Do you think that you're not going to be able to do what the task is? Are you the pleaser? And do you overcommit yourself? Are you the crisis maker who really likes the adrenaline to get everything moving? And are you the dreamer who just has lots of ideas and enjoys dreaming into the ideas? And are you the defier who really doesn't think you should have to do it in the first place? I think it would be useful to figure out who you are, because then you can place yourself in those different situations. And I think from what everybody has said, let's get the tasks into small chunks. Maybe make a big chart for the big task and then make your lists for the little chunks. The best part of a list is ticking it off when you've done it or crossing through. That's the satisfying part, isn't it? If all else fails, get hold of a Davis dyslexia facilitator and go through the concept. Self, change, consequence, time, sequence and order, and motivation and responsibility.
If you feel you can't do this, then you may need concepts. Maybe that's the problem. And yeah, knowing who you are and what type of person you are really helps you figure out what to do.
And I think knowing that you're worth it. I think there's quite a few people who feel maybe they're not worth all that effort, but you are definitely worth it. You're worth 100%.
I think parents need to think about how they use consequences with children, because some don't realize that they perpetuate procrastination, and it may be that they need to think about it to motivate the children and give the child more understanding of what consequence is.
And there are good ones. The good
Not
ones.
always taking away the tablet.
Well, touch wood, this podcast will be out very shortly, and we will be looking forward to the next one, which will be on March the 1st, the live chat part of it. And Sharon, what are we talking about on March the 1st?
We're talking about Davis not being a tutoring program.
Ah, yes. The difference between teaching and facilitating and tutoring. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the live chat. Thank you for those who are listening. And please join us March the 1st, every first of the month. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.